ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change's gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
What I want to say is that today, among other things, we're working on a long struggle dealing with police brutality here in the city, and the Lawyers Guild is a major part of that. Major part of that. Cynthia Heenan, Buck Davis, Ron Dada, Val Newman, everybody. Police brutality was happening in '64, was happening in 1664, 1864, 1964, and it's happening today in 2004, that John Conyers said when we interviewed, because we have, as he said, one of the worst attorney generals since Palmer in 1920. John Ashcroft. You can clap if you want to, but some might not agree, but the bottom line is we have some problems that happen today that I might say that we've overcome. The guest who's coming up today to speak encountered some of that with his attempts to get here from Atlanta, Georgia, coming through an airport in a homeland, what we call homeland insecurity. He has been fighting since '64, when we talk about attorneys going south to do this. The terrorism that was visited on people from Emmett Till to the present and so forth, these young individuals were fighting in the South because many of them could do no less than that. And when the NLG and other lawyers came down to assist, it just centralized the necessity to continue to fight terrorism then, terrorism today, the kind of terrorism that was visited on African American communities then and still is today, and on people who are involved in struggle and who are principled and who are progressive today, then, and yesterday. So in that respect, our next guest is as much a man of today as he was of yesterday, and makes the efforts of the honorees here tonight really shine for what they have been and what they are, for the sterling efforts that they put forth. Because this person, when I asked him how he wanted to be introduced, he said as an organizer. And I agree. Because just like he, Gloria House, whose aunt, Judge Claudia Morgan, Gloria House was a member of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committees, a member of the Coalition Against Police Brutality today. And this man still is struggling, still is fighting, still is strong. Martin Luther King called him the fiercest orator of the civil rights movement. Got involved when he was 17 years old, organized people in the cotton field along with Kwame Ture to raise the term that motivated an entire generation, Black Power, Willie Mukasa Ricks.
Thank you very much. And for most of my time in the movement, I was in the audience clapping for Stokely or Rap or Martin King or Jim Foreman or somebody, and I wasn't up here on the platform talking. And they never called me to the platform unless they wanted people to go out and do some demonstrating, protesting, throw some bricks, or do some fighting. So I think I'll be encouraging y'all tonight to let's throw a few bricks, do a little fighting. Yeah. First, I would like to just stop a moment, 10 seconds, for all the Africans who stood as soldiers here in Detroit in 1967 with the cry of Black Power and went out and faced tanks and vicious police and the army and fought for the dignity of our people right here in Detroit. And that I know that 40 people men, women, and children were shot down like dogs, and over 200 or 300 or more were shot down. But at least 40 was murdered. And during the 60s, 67, you had thousands of people to be shot down and murdered in the streets under the term rioting or rebellion. And rebellion is a form of protest and a form of struggle. Dr. King, who tried to be nonviolent and tried to use the Bible and tried to use the Constitution to push this system to do right, they shot him in the mouth. And the day that they fired the bullet, matter of fact, a month before they killed him, I was at Martin's house, and Stokely had said to me, they're out to kill Martin. And I was at Martin's house, and I told Martin, one night I was back, we was in the bedroom. He used to give me his clothes. So, well, you ain't got no clothes. Come over to my house anytime you want some. So one night about 10 o'clock, I wanted some clothes. So I went over to Martin's house, and I turned to Martin and said, Martin, they're out to get you. They're out to kill you. He said, who was that? And I said, the police, the government, or whatever. But that was, how you say, February 7th, 1968. And the reason I remember that date, because on February the 7th, on February the 8th, 1968, was the Orangeburg Massacre, where the students went from South Carolina State, went down to the bowling alley to integrate the bowling alley, and when they got back to the campus, the state troopers came to the campus, and when the kids were coming out the cafeteria from eating, and the campus was full of students, the state troopers started shooting down in the crowd, shot 6 to 8 children in the back, and killed 4. The Orangeburg Massacre. But let's go back further. In the 60s, 61, we went to Albany movement. And we went out and demonstrated and started going in the front doors and talking about the injustice that black people were facing, not only not being able to go in the front door and sit in, but we started talking about the amount of money that they paid maids and how they paid workers, how a black worker couldn't make the same amount of money that a white worker made. And we started speaking against all the forms of injustice. And in the Albany movement, there was a great young attorney named C.B. King. Have anybody heard of C.B. King? When they put us in jail, C.B. King came to get us out of jail down. We filled the jails of Albany. C.B. King came to get us out of jail. And when he came out down to get us in Camilla out of jail, he brought his wife with him. And she was 8 months pregnant. Sheriff Cobb Campbell beat a baby, beat C.B. King, and beat a baby out of his wife's belly. C.B. King. I remember when C.B. King came to visit me when I was in the Americas, Georgia jail. When he came out of jail, Sheriff Chapel and the justice of the peace had poured acid in his car. And when he sit in his car, he sit on acid. And his clothes rotted off of him. But he was a man of so much pride and dignity, he would dare tell about the skin and the pain that was coming to what the acid was bringing off his skin. C.B. King was a warrior. We had another young warrior to come in the movement, a lawyer, came from New York. His name was Bill Consular. Bill Consular, William Consular. Bill Consular was the kind of man he would defend us when we would go to court. But Bill Consular was the kind of man that before court or after court, he would come join us in demonstrations. Bill Consular was a lawyer and a fighter. We had many good lawyers in the movement. These lawyers were bombed, they were shot, they were beaten down. They called them nigger lovers, and your life was in much danger as anybody else's. I remember in '65, when we marched from Selma to Montgomery, there was a lady that came from here, Viola Luso, giving the Klan came by and parked by her car and did a drive-by. And they murdered Viola Liuzzo. Shot her down like a dog. Jimmy Reed and Selma. Cheney, Swan, and Goodman was murdered and lynched because they wanted us to be free. In Lowndes County, Alabama, where you had a county 80%, 89% Africans, but yet the white people, the 12% or 11% terrorists, wouldn't allow us to register to vote. When we went out and tried to register to vote, they would come and shoot in our houses. When we went out and tried to register to vote, the plantation owners would put the people off the plantation. And we had to build tent cities for the people to live in. And then at night, the Ku Klux and the police department would come by and shoot in the tents. And they didn't only do this in Alabama. They did it throughout Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and throughout America. But in 1966, after James Meredith was shot down in Mississippi, Martin King, Whitney Young, and Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, Whitney Young, Roy Wilkins, Stokely, Martin, Floyd McKissick, a group called Deacons for Defense. We met in Memphis and said, we have to carry the march on that Meredith was shot trying to tell people not to have fear. And we marched through Mississippi where we called for black power. And when we called for black power, people are saying, what do you mean power? Why would black people want power? What do they mean? And what power is okay, but why would it be black power like black was something bad? We talked about black power. Then the people in Detroit came and they changed the level and the forms of demonstrations that we were having. At one time we would go and walk up to white people and tell them we want to be free and let them spit on us, kick us, beat us, burn down our houses, shoot us, or whatever. But by 1967, the people in Detroit said, now we must fight back. And they started burning down the cities and screaming black power. But with this black power was not just a call for black power, it was a call for black dignity. It was a call to say that black people must be proud of their hair, their nose, their lips, their skin, and their culture. It said that we have a culture like everybody else in the world. And black power pointed us toward Africa. And when we looked at Africa, we were able to say that all black people come from Africa. We were able to say that Africa is the richest land in the world. But yet the people of Africa are the poorest people in the world. We were able to look at South Africa, where you had the vast majority of the African people, but yet all the rich land, all the diamonds and gold and richness of South Africa was in the hands of the Europeans. We look at Zimbabwe, where Cecil Rhodes went to Africa and murdered millions of Africa and named the country after itself, Rhodesia. Then we saw them terrorists in the Congo. What was his name? Leopold. Leopold murdered millions of Africans. They would make the Africans work. If the Africans didn't work hard enough, they cut their ears off. They cut their feet off, cut their hands off, because they didn't produce enough rubber leaves and rubber trees or diamonds or whatever that they needed to steal to take to Europe. But not only did we see Africa, we looked at Africa, we saw Angola and all of Africa being dominated by colonial powers. We saw imperialism at work in Africa. We saw all the labor, all the natural resources of Africa